The dish towel cost 50 cents at a thrift store, but the promise he made on it would cost him $89 million and 18 years to keep. Naomi, a black waitress with nothing, saw the dying white boy behind the diner fence. Her family was broke, but she fed him anyway, every single day for 8 months. No one made her. No one paid her. She just did it. When social services took him away, 7-year-old William made an impossible promise to Naomi's 6-year-old daughter. "I'll marry you when I'm rich." Zora laughed. Then he tore the dish towel in half. One piece for each of them. 18 years dissolved. William became a tech CEO, spent 5 years hunting for them, hired 6 investigators, burned through $200,000, found nothing. The diner was gone. The family had vanished. Tonight, he'd walk into Oakwood Elementary School for a donor meeting. Zora would be there, teaching hungry children, her half of the dish towel framed on her classroom wall. Neither knew they were 30 minutes away from collision. William Frost woke at 5:45 a.m. in a Silicon Valley penthouse that cost more than Naomi had earned in her entire life. Smart glass walls. The bay stretched below him, fog rolling in from the Pacific. Dawn turned everything silver. He didn't see it. He never did. The coffee maker was German. $4,500. He pressed a button and walked to his closet before the first drop fell. 30 designer suits hung in perfect rows, organized by color. He pulled one without thinking. The apartment was quiet. Always quiet. No clatter. No mess. No evidence that anyone actually lived here. It looked like a showroom. Felt like a mausoleum. His phone lit up. His assistant. Board presentation at 10. The merger is final. $23 million. William typed back, noted. $23 million. He felt exactly nothing. He walked to his desk, unlocked the bottom drawer. Inside sat a small wooden box. Custom-made. Climate-controlled. Inside the box, half of a faded dish towel. This was the only thing that mattered. He lifted it carefully. The fabric was fragile now, threads coming loose despite the preservation measures. 22 years old, older than some of his employees. Every morning he looked at it. Every morning the same thought. Where are they? The board meeting was theater. Congratulations flew around the table. Handshakes. Someone mentioned champagne. The merger had closed ahead of schedule. William smiled, said the appropriate things, played the role they expected. Inside? Empty. His COO, David, cornered him afterward in the hall. "You good, man? You seem disconnected in there." "I'm Fina. You've been saying that for 5 years." David crossed his arms. "Ever since you started buying property in that dying town in the Midwest. What's the obsession with? What's it called?" "Millbrook." Williams said nothing. "There's no ROI there. No tech sector. No growth. You've sunk $500,000 into real estate that's worth maybe 200 grand. David leaned closer. "What's really going on?" William looked at him. David was a good executive. Sharp. Loyal. But he wouldn't understand. Personal reasons. Personal reasons don't usually cost $500,000. William grabbed his briefcase. They do when you owe someone your life. He walked away before David could ask more questions. That afternoon, William stood in front of his bathroom mirror, tie half knotted, staring at a man he barely recognized. Tailored suit, $3,000. Watch, $45,000. Shoes, Italian leather. He looked successful, polished, powerful. He looked nothing like the skeletal 7-year-old who'd once pressed his face against a chain-link fence, too weak to cry, watching garbage bins overflow with food he couldn't reach. That boy was dead, or should have been. William finished the tie, grabbed his keys. Tonight, he'd fly to Millbrook, the town he'd escaped 18 years ago and spent 5 years trying to infiltrate. His 6th investigator had finally found a lead, an elementary school teacher named Zora Jenkins running a free meal program. Jenkins. The name had appeared in old diner records he'd purchased from a bankruptcy auction. Naomi Jenkins, former employee. Last known address, demolished. But teachers had public records. William had called the school, posed as a wealthy donor interested in nutrition programs for at-risk youth. The principal had been thrilled. A potential 6-figure donation? She'd set up a meeting immediately. He didn't tell her he'd fund the entire district if it meant finding one person. The flight was short. William rented a car at the regional airport, drove through streets that hadn't changed in 2 decades. Millbrook looked exactly as he remembered, tired, forgotten, the kind of town people left and never came back to. Except he had come back. The strip mall where Naomi's kitchen once stood was now a luxury coffee shop. $7 lattes, exposed brick, reclaimed wood tables. He bought the building 6 months ago through an LLC. The owner didn't know who'd purchased it. William parked across the street, stared at the space where the fence used to be. The fence where a woman with barely enough to survive had reached through the gap every single day and handed him a plate of food. He could still taste those meals. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans. Plain, simple, life-saving. His phone buzzed. Meeting at 7 p.m. Oakwood Elementary, room 14. Principal says the teacher is excited to meet you. William checked his watch. 6:30. He sat in the car, hands on the steering wheel, half of a dish towel folded in his jacket pocket. After 18 years of searching, he was 30 minutes away from finding out if Zora Jenkins was his Zora, or if this was just another dead end in a search that had no ending. He started the engine. Either way, he'd know soon. William sat in the car, hands on the steering wheel, half of a dish towel folded in his jacket pocket. 30 minutes until the meeting. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in years, he let himself remember. Really remember. Not the sanitized version he told himself. Not the success story he'd become. He remembered the truth. He needed to go back to the fence. William Frost was 7 years old the first time he understood that hunger could kill you. Not the kind of hunger that makes you irritable before dinner. The kind that makes your body start eating itself. The kind that turns your vision gray at the edges and makes standing up feel like climbing a mountain. He'd been on the streets for 6 days. 6 days since his mother OD'd in their motel room. 6 days since he'd run before the police came, terrified they'd put him somewhere worse. 6 days of dumpster diving, finding nothing but rot and maggots. The fence appeared on day 7. Chain link, 8 feet tall. Behind it, a small building with a hand-painted sign. Naomi's Kitchen, home cooking, fair prices. William pressed his face against the metal links and watched paradise. Through the back door, he could see the kitchen. A black woman in an apron moved between the stove and the prep station. Steam rose from pots. The smell of cooking meat made his stomach cramp so hard he doubled over. But it was the garbage bins that drew him closer. 2 large dumpsters sat just inside the fence line. At 9 p.m., after closing, someone would throw bags of waste out there. Leftovers. Scraps. Things people hadn't finished. William waited in the shadows across the alley. When the staff left, he tried to climb the fence. Got 3 feet up before his arms gave out. Fell hard on his back. Couldn't breathe for 30 seconds. He lay there in the alley, staring at stars he couldn't really see through the city light, and thought, this is how I die. Then he heard a voice. You okay, baby? William's head snapped up. The woman from the kitchen stood at the fence. She wasn't supposed to be there. Everyone had left. But here she was, apron still on, holding a plate covered in aluminum foil. William tried to run. Couldn't. Too weak. Hey. Her voice was gentle. I'm not going to hurt you. You hungry? William didn't answer. Couldn't. She knelt down on her side of the fence, slid the plate through the gap at the bottom where the chain link didn't quite meet the concrete. Take it, she said. Go on. William stared at the plate like it might disappear, like he might be hallucinating. It's real, the woman said, as if reading his mind. Meatloaf. Made it myself. Still warm. William crawled forward, grabbed the plate with shaking hands. The first bite made him cry. The second made him choke. Slow down, baby. Slow down, or you'll make yourself sick. But he couldn't slow down. He ate like an animal, like someone who understood this might be the last meal of his life. The woman watched him through the fence, her expression unreadable. When he finished, she spoke again. You got people? William shook his head. Where are you sleeping? He pointed vaguely toward the underpass 2 blocks away. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, I'll be here tomorrow. Same time. You come back, hear me? William nodded, unable to speak. The woman stood, brushed off her apron. My name's Naomi. She walked back into the kitchen, and William sat alone in the alley with an empty plate and the first thread of hope he'd felt in a week. Behind Naomi, watching from the kitchen doorway, stood a little girl with cornrows and wide, serious eyes. Zora was 6 years old, and she'd just watched her mother give away their dinner. The meatloaf had been for tomorrow. The groceries were running low. Naomi's paycheck wasn't due for another 5 days, and they needed that money for Zora's school supplies. But her mother had given it to a stranger. Zora didn't understand it then. She wouldn't understand it for another 18 years. But she watched her mother's face as Naomi came back inside and saw something there she'd never seen before. Not quite sadness, not quite joy, purpose. "Mama," Zora said quietly, "are we going to eat tomorrow?" Naomi knelt down, pulled her daughter close. "We'll figure it out, baby. We always do. Why'd you give him our food?" Naomi looked toward the fence, where the boy had already disappeared into the night. "Because," she said slowly, "that child is dying. And we're not." It wasn't much of an answer, but it was the truth. The next night, William came back. And the night after that. And the night after that. Every evening at 9 p.m., after the last customer left and the staff went home, Naomi would walk out to the fence with a plate. Sometimes meatloaf, sometimes chicken, sometimes just rice and beans. And every evening, William would be there, waiting like a ghost in the shadows. Zora watched this ritual from the kitchen doorway. Watch the stranger boy eat their food. Watch her mother come back inside with an empty plate and a lighter step. Watch their own meals get smaller. On the 4th week, Naomi stopped packing Zora's lunch for school. "Budget's tight, baby. You'll eat when you get home." Zora was hungry all day at school, but she didn't complain. On the 6th week, Naomi started skipping breakfast. "Not hungry, baby. You eat." Zora knew it was a lie. On the 8th week, Zora started saving half of her dinner and hiding it in the fridge. For her mother. For later. The cycle continued. 3 lives, bound together by a plate of food and a fence that separated everything and nothing. William gained weight. Color returned to his cheeks. He could stand without getting dizzy. Could think clearly. Could remember what hope felt like. Naomi lost weight. Dark circles formed under her eyes. Her uniform hung looser. But every night at 9 p.m., she showed up at the fence. And Zora learned what sacrifice looked like. Not the grand, dramatic kind. The quiet kind. The kind that costs everything and asks for nothing in return. The kind that happens every single day, one plate at a time, until it becomes who you are. If this story is already touching your heart, wait until you see how it unfolds. Hit that subscribe button now so you don't miss what happens when these 2 lives collide 18 years later. Trust me, you want to see this reunion. The memory released him. William opened his eyes, still sitting in the rental car across from the coffee shop that used to be Naomi's kitchen. 22 years since that first plate. 22 years since he'd learned that kindness existed, that strangers could save you, that some people chose to see you when the whole world looked away. His phone buzzed. 20 minutes until the meeting. William pulled out of the parking space, drove toward Oakwood Elementary, and tried to ignore the voice in his head that whispered, "What if it's not her? What if you spent 5 years chasing a ghost?" The truth was uglier than that. The truth was, William Frost had everything money could buy and nothing money couldn't. His penthouse back in Silicon Valley was a museum of success. 1,200 square feet of minimalist perfection. Smart glass, automated everything, furniture that cost more than cars. And it felt exactly like the underpass where he'd slept at age 7. Cold, empty, a place to survive, not live. He'd built a tech empire worth $89 million. Started with nothing but coding skills and rage. Rage at a system that had let him starve. Rage at a world that had looked past him. Rage that he'd channeled in his 16-hour days and ruthless business decisions. He'd won, and it meant nothing. Because every morning, he unlocked that drawer, looked at half a dish towel, and remembered that everything he'd achieved was built on someone else's sacrifice. 6 months ago, his 6th private investigator had called with the same news as the previous 5. "Mr. Frost, I've exhausted every database." The Jenkins family left no forwarding address when the diner closed. No social media presence. No property records. No tax filings I can access. Naomi Jenkins remarried in 2014 and changed her name. The county won't release it without a court order. The daughter could be anywhere. Could have married, changed her name too. Could have moved out of state. Could have. Keep looking, William had said. Sir. The investigator's voice had been gentle, pitying. I've been doing this for 20 years. Some people don't want to be found. Some people just disappear. Maybe it's time to. I'll double your rate. It's not about money. It's about reality. This is a ghost chase. William had fired him on the spot, then sat in his office for 3 hours, staring at the dish towel in its climate-controlled case, and made a decision. If investigators couldn't find them, he'd do it himself. He'd go back to Millbrook, the town he'd escaped 18 years ago and swore he'd never see again. Back to the neighborhood where he'd almost died. Back to the fence. He bought properties quietly through LLCs. The old diner building. The apartment complex where he'd briefly stayed in foster care before being transferred. Vacant lots. Anything connected to his past, he purchased and preserved. People thought he was gentrifying. They were wrong. He was building a net, a web of connections, hoping that somewhere in the property records, the transaction histories, the old tenant lists, he'd find a thread. And last month, he'd found one. Buried in a bankruptcy auction for the diner's assets. Employee records from 1998 to 2009. Naomi Jenkins, hired 2004. Last known address, 412 Fletcher Street, demolished 2011. But the records also mentioned a daughter, Zora Jenkins, age 6, listed as emergency contact. Zora would be 24 now. Teacher licensing databases were public record. And in Millbrook County, there was exactly one Zora Jenkins. Elementary school teacher. Oakwood Elementary. 3 years in the district. It couldn't be coincidence. William had called the school, posed as a donor, and gotten tonight's meeting in under 48 hours. Now he drove through Millbrook's forgotten streets, past boarded-up shops and houses with peeling paint, and felt the walls of his golden prison closing in. What if he was wrong? What if this Zora Jenkins was a different person entirely? What if 18 years had changed them so much that recognition was impossible? What if she didn't want to be found? William pulled into Oakwood Elementary's parking lot. The building was old brick, weathered but standing. Lights glowed in a few windows. A banner over the entrance read, "Every child matters." He sat in the car, engine running, hand on the key. This was it. 5 years of searching. $200,000. 6 failed investigations. Countless sleepless nights. It all came down to the next 30 minutes. William turned off the engine, grabbed his briefcase, and felt the weight of the dish towel in his jacket pocket. Then he walked toward the entrance, toward a classroom where a woman named Zora Jenkins was waiting to meet a wealthy donor who wanted to fund her meal program. Neither of them knew they'd already met. 18 years ago, across a fence, over a plate of meatloaf that had cost everything and meant everything. But before William could walk into that school, before he could face the woman who might be Zora, his mind pulled him back. Back to the day everything changed. The day he'd learned that promises could be both beautiful and impossible. It was a Tuesday in October. William had been coming to the fence for 8 months. 240 days of meals that had transformed him from a skeleton into a living boy. He'd gained 23 pounds, grew 2 inches, could run again, think clearly, sleep without his stomach screaming. Naomi had saved his life. But survival doesn't mean safety. The social worker found him on a Tuesday morning, sleeping under the bridge near the railroad tracks. Officer Martinez had been kind. "You got people, son." William shook his head. "Can't stay out here." "You're what, 7? 8? 7. You need to be in school. You need a home." William had run. Made it 3 blocks before his legs gave out. He wasn't starving anymore, but 8 months on the streets had left damage that food alone couldn't fix. They took him to child services, processed him, found a foster placement 3 states away. "You leave Friday," the caseworker said. "Nice family. 2 other kids. They're good people." William nodded, numb. 3 states away meant he'd never see Naomi again, never see the fence again, never repay what she'd given him. On Thursday night, he ran. Made it to Naomi's kitchen just as she was closing. Burst through the back door, wild-eyed, desperate. Naomi turned from the sink, surprise flashing across her face. Behind her, Zora sat at a small table doing homework. William. Naomi dried her hands. Baby, what's wrong? They're sending me away. The words tumbled out. Friday. Foster care. 3 states. I can't, I won't. Naomi's expression shifted. Understanding, then sorrow. Come here. She pulled him into a hug. It's okay. It's gonna be okay. I don't want to go. I know, baby. But you need a real home. You need school. I need you. The words hung in the air. Naomi pulled back, looked at him with eyes full of pain. I wish I could keep you. I do. But I can't afford another mouth to feed. I can barely handle me and Zora. And legally, I got no claim. You understand? William understood. Understanding didn't make it hurt less. Can I stay tonight? His voice was small. Just tonight? Naomi looked at Zora, then back at William. Yeah, you can stay. They made up a bed on the floor with blankets and a pillow. Fed him dinner, chicken and rice, the last of the week's groceries. Sat with him while he picked at the plate. Zora watched from across the table, silent as always. Around 9 p.m., Naomi had to step out. Quick errand to the corner store, last-minute supplies for tomorrow. William and Zora sat alone. You're really leaving? Zora asked. William nodded. Why can't you stay? Your mom doesn't have enough money. Zora was quiet for a moment. Then, she gave you all our food. It wasn't an accusation, just fact. I know, William said. We were hungry a lot. I'm sorry. Mama said it was okay. Said you needed it more. William looked at this 6-year-old girl who'd watched her own meals shrink so a stranger could eat, who'd never complained, who'd just accepted it. I'm going to pay her back, William said suddenly. I promise. When I'm older, when I have money, I'm going to find you and pay her back. Zora tilted her head. Ow, I don't know, but I will. You won't remember us. Yes, I will. Everyone forgets. William stood, looking around the small kitchen. His eyes landed on a dish towel hanging by the sink. Faded blue, worn thin from years of use. He grabbed it, turned to Zora. I need something to remember. Before Zora could respond, William tore the dish towel in half. The fabric ripped easily, the sound loud in the quiet kitchen. He handed one piece to Zora. You keep this. I'll keep this. He held up the other half. And when I find you again, we'll put it back together. Zora stared at her piece. When will you find us? I don't know, but I will. William's voice was fierce. 7 years old and making impossible promises. And when I do, I'm going to marry you. Zora blinked. What? I'm going to marry you. Like in the movies. The prince comes back and marries the princess. I'm not a princess. You are to me. Zora laughed. Not mockingly. Just the laugh of a 6-year-old hearing something absurd. You're weird, she said. I'm serious. You can't marry someone just cause they gave you food. I could do anything I want. William clutched his half of the towel. And I want to marry you. I promise. The door opened. Naomi came back in, bag of groceries in hand, and stopped. Did y'all tear up my dish towel? William and Zora looked at each other. I needed it, William said. Naomi looked at the two halves, at the children holding them, and something in her face softened. All right then, she said quietly. Y'all made a promise? William nodded. Then you keep it. Naomi set the bag down. Promises matter. You hear me? You don't make M unless you mean M. I mean it, William said. That night, William slept on the floor of Naomi's kitchen, one hand clutching half a dish towel, and dreamed of a future where he could repay the debt. Friday came too fast. The foster parents arrived at 8 a.m. Nice people, kind faces. They said all the right things. William stood in the parking lot, a plastic bag of donated clothes in one hand, half a dish towel in his pocket. Naomi knelt in front of him. You be good. You hear me? You go to school. You make something of yourself. I will. And don't worry about paying nothing back. You don't owe me. Yes, I do. Naomi pulled him into one last hug. Then you pay it forward. You find some other hungry kids someday, and you feed them. That's how you pay me back. William nodded against her shoulder. Zora stood behind her mother, holding her half of the towel. I'll find you, William said to her. I promise. Zora didn't say anything, just watched as William got into the sedan, watched as the car pulled away, watched as the boy who'd promised to marry her disappeared down the street. She looked down at the piece of torn fabric in her hand. "Mama," she said quietly, "do you think he'll really come back?" Naomi put her arm around her daughter. "I don't know, baby. Most people don't. But he promised. People promise a lot of things." Zora tucked the dish towel piece into her pocket. "I'm keeping it anyway." "Okay, baby. Just in case." "Just in case," Naomi agreed. They stood in the parking lot for a long time after the car disappeared. Neither of them knew it would be 18 years before they'd see William Frost again. 18 years of silence. 18 years of forgetting. 18 years that would collapse the moment William walked into Oakwood Elementary and saw half of a dish towel hanging on a classroom wall. A 7-year-old boy just promised to marry a 6-year-old girl when he gets rich. Sound impossible, right? If you're wondering whether he actually keeps this promise, smash that like button and drop a comment telling me. Do you think childhood promises like this ever really come true? And don't forget to subscribe, because what happens in 18 years will blow your mind. The memory faded. William stood on the sidewalk outside Oakwood Elementary, hand on the door, and forced himself to breathe. The drive from the airport had taken him past his entire history. First stop, 412 Fletcher Street. The address from Naomi's employment records. Her last known residence. It didn't exist anymore. The entire block had been demolished in 2011. Now it was a community garden. Neat rows of vegetables, a painted sign that read, "Growing Together," and absolutely no trace of the building where Naomi and Zora had once lived. William had stood there for 20 minutes, staring at tomato plants, feeling his hope crack. 5 years of searching, $200,000, and the address led to dirt and vegetables. Second stop, Naomi's kitchen. He bought the building 6 months ago, but hadn't actually visited since. Had let his property manager handle everything. Now he stood in front of Millbrook Brew Company, a hipster coffee shop with exposed brick, Edison bulbs, and a chalkboard menu advertising $8 lavender lattes. The owner was a 20-something white guy with a man bun. "Can I help you?" he asked, wiping down the espresso machine. "This used to be a diner," William said. "Naomi's kitchen. You know anything about it?" The owner shrugged. "The building was empty when I leased it. Owner some LLC, never met them." William knew the owner. He was looking at him. "What about the previous tenants? Does anyone remember them?" "Dude, that was like 15 years ago. Neighborhood's completely changed. All that old stuff's gone. Gone." The word echoed in William's skull. He'd come back to find answers and found erasure instead. The entire neighborhood had been scrubbed clean, gentrified, rebuilt. The past paved over with artisanal coffee and reclaimed wood. Third stop, County Records Office. He'd spent 3 hours going through property deeds, tax records, business licenses. Naomi Jenkins had sold the diner building in 2009 after her business partner died. Moved to an apartment on the east side. That address was now a parking lot. In 2014, Naomi remarried. Her marriage license listed her new name as Naomi Foster. But tracking Naomi Foster led nowhere. No property records. No employment history William could access without a court order. The trail went cold. By 5 p.m., William sat in his rental car outside the county building, head in his hands, and faced the thing he'd been avoiding for 5 years. What if they didn't want to be found? What if disappearing had been intentional? What if he was chasing people who deliberately erased themselves from every system, every record, every database, because they didn't want someone like him showing up with guilt and money and impossible promises? His phone buzzed. His assistant checking in. "Board wants to know when you'll be back. Thompson's asking about the Q4 projections." William ignored it. Another buzz. His COO. "You okay? You've been dark for 6 hours." William turned the phone off. He couldn't go back. Not yet. Not without answers. But he was out of options. He tracked down every lead, followed every thread, spent money and time and hope, and come up with nothing but demolished buildings and dead ends. William pulled out the dish towel from his jacket pocket, unfolded it carefully. The fabric was barely holding together. Threads coming loose. Faded to almost gray. 22 years old. Older than his company. Older than his fortune. Older than most of his relationships. This piece of torn fabric was the only constant in his life. And he was about to give up. He was about to accept that some debts couldn't be repaid. Some promises couldn't be kept. Some people stayed, lost no matter how hard you searched. He was about to start the car and drive back to the airport when someone knocked on his window. An elderly black man in a postal worker's uniform. William rolled down the window. "You lost, son?" the man asked. "Yeah," William said. "I am. You looking for something specific?" William almost said no, almost waved him off, but something in the man's kind face made him tell the truth. "I'm looking for a woman named Naomi Jenkins. Used to run a diner here back in the 2000s. She and her daughter, Zora. I need to find them." The postal worker's eyes widened slightly. "Naomi Jenkins. Lord, I ain't heard that name in years." William's pulse spiked. "You knew her?" "Sure did. Used to deliver to her diner. Good woman. Real good woman." He paused. "Why you looking for her?" "She saved my life when I was 7. I need to thank her." The postal worker studied William for a long moment, then nodded, as if making a decision. "Naomi died 2 years ago. Cancer." The words hit William like a fist to the chest. Dead. Naomi was dead. The woman who'd fed him for 8 months, who'd chosen him over her own security, who'd taught him that kindness existed. Gone. "I'm sorry, son," the postal worker said gently. "If you're looking to thank her, you're too late." William couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. But the man continued, "Her daughter's still around. Zora. She teaches at Oakwood Elementary. Runs some kind of meal program for kids, just like old Naomi used to." The world snapped back into focus. "Oakwood Elementary?" "Yes, sir. About 10 minutes from here. She's there most evenings, I think, running that program." William's hands shook on the steering wheel. "Zora. Zora was here." "Thank you," William managed. The postal worker smiled. "You go find her. And when you do, you tell her Reggie said hello. Tell her I'm glad someone remembers Naomi." He walked away, and William sat alone in the car, reeling. Naomi was dead. He'd never get to thank her. Never get to tell her what those 8 months had meant. Never get to show her that he'd become someone worth saving. But Zora was alive. Zora was 10 minutes away. Zora was running a meal program, just like her mother. William started the car, typed Oakwood Elementary into his GPS, and drove through the streets of his past toward a future he couldn't predict. The school appeared like a beacon. Old brick building, weathered but standing. He parked, grabbed his briefcase, felt the weight of the dish towel in his pocket. This was it. 18 years. He walked toward the entrance, pushed through the front doors, and followed signs to Community Room 14. Through the window, he could see children, maybe 30 of them, sitting at tables, eating from trays. And at the front of the room, serving food with a gentle smile, was a black woman in her mid-20s. She had her mother's eyes. William's breath caught. Zora. After 18 years, she was right there. He stood frozen in the hallway, watching her serve a little girl with pigtails, watching her laugh at something a boy said, watching her move through the room with the same graceful purpose her mother had once had. And on the wall behind her, framed between children's drawings of sons and houses and stick-figure families. Half a dish towel, faded blue, torn edge, identical to the piece in William's pocket. Time stopped. William pushed open the door to room 14. The noise hit him first. 30 children, eating and talking and laughing. The scrape of chairs, the clatter of trays, the sound of life. It smelled like school cafeteria food. Steamed trays and plastic utensils and industrial mac and cheese. It smelled like salvation. Zora looked up from serving a plate, saw him standing in the doorway. Professional smile, the one reserved for strangers. "Can I help you?" she called over the noise. William's voice stuck in his throat. She didn't recognize him. Of course she didn't. He'd been 7 years old. Skeletal. Hollow-eyed. Nothing like the 6'2" man in the expensive suit, now standing in her doorway. "I'm William Frost," he managed. "I have a meeting with Principal Edwards." Recognition flickered, not of him, but of his name. "Oh, you're the donor." "Yes. She mentioned you were coming. Give me just a second." She finished serving the girl in front of her, said something that made the child giggle, then wiped her hands on a towel. That towel, blue and faded, the exact twin of the one in William's pocket. Zora walked toward him, hand extended. "Zora Jenkins. I run the after-school meal program." William shook her hand. Her grip was firm, warm. calloused in a way that said she worked with her hands. That paperwork wasn't her only job. "Thank you for coming," she continued. "We've been trying to expand the program for months, but funding's been impossible. If you're serious about helping, we could feed 50 more kids." William heard the words, but couldn't focus. He was staring at her face, trying to find the 6-year-old girl in the woman standing before him. The eyes were the same, serious, watchful. The voice was different, deeper, stronger. But the way she moved through the room, that was pure Naomi. That same gentle authority, that same way of making space for people. "Mr. Frost." Zora's smile faltered slightly. "Are you okay?" William shook himself. "Long day." "Yes, I'm interested in funding expansion." Zora's shoulders relaxed. "That's wonderful. Let me show you around." She led him through the room, explaining the program. How they served 40 kids every weekday. How some of these children got their only reliable meal here. How the school budget covered the bare minimum, and everything else came from donations. "We model it after old community programs," Zora was saying. "My mother used to run something similar back when she had her diner. She taught me that feeding kids isn't just about nutrition. It's about dignity. It's about showing up." William stopped walking. "Your mother had a diner?" "Yeah, Naomi's Kitchen. Closed about 15 years ago." Zora's voice softened. "She passed away 2 years back." "I'm sorry." "Thank you." Zora looked around the room. "This program is my way of continuing what she started. Making sure no kid goes hungry if I can help it." William followed her gaze to the wall. The framed dish towel hung there, right next to a child's drawing of a rainbow. "That's an interesting piece," he said carefully. Zora smiled. "Oh, that. Kind of silly thing to frame, I know. But it was my mother's. She used it at the diner. And," she hesitated, "there's a story attached to it." "What kind of story?" "The kind that sounds ridiculous when you say it out loud." Zora laughed, slightly embarrassed. "When I was 6, there was this boy. Homeless kid. My mom fed him for months, every single day. When he left, he tore that towel in half. Gave me one piece, kept the other. Promised he'd come back someday, and..." She trailed off. "Anyway, kid stuff. I kept it because it reminds me of my mom. Reminds me why this work matters." William's hand moved to his jacket pocket, touched the matching half. "What did he promise?" His voice came out rough. Zora looked at him strangely. "Saw the boy. What did he promise?" "Oh." She laughed again, more self-conscious. "This is going to sound crazy. He promised he'd marry me. When he was rich." She shook her head. "I was 6. He was 7. Just kids saying kid things. I don't even remember his name." William pulled the dish towel from his pocket, unfolded it slowly, held it up. Zora's laughter died. Her eyes went to the fabric in his hand, then to the matching piece on her wall, then back to his face. The noise in the room faded. "William," she whispered. "William Frost." He nodded. Zora stepped backward, hand going in her mouth. "Oh my God, I kept my half," William said. "For 18 years. I kept it. You came back. I promised." Zora's eyes filled with tears. She crossed the room to the wall, unhooked the frame with shaking hands, brought it back to where William stood, held her half next to his. The torn edges matched perfectly. 18 years disappeared. 30 children kept eating, unaware that in the back of their cafeteria, 2 people were standing with pieces of a dish towel that had waited longer than most marriages to be reunited. "I'll look for you," William said. "For 5 years. I hired investigators. I bought buildings. I spent everything trying to find you. We moved." Zora's voice was thick. "After Mama remarried. Changed her name. I had no idea you were looking. I promised I'd come back. People break promises all the time. Not this one." Zora looked at him, really looked at him, seeing not the man in the expensive suit, but the 7-year-old boy who'd eaten like he was dying because he had been. "You're rich," she said. "You actually got rich." "Yeah." "You came back." "Yeah." A child tugged on Zora's sleeve. "Ms. Jenkins? Can I have more mac and cheese?" The spell broke. Zora blinked, wiped her eyes quickly. "Of course, honey. Go sit down, I'll bring it." She looked back at William. "I need to finish serving, but don't leave. Please. I'm not going anywhere. We need to talk. I know. I have about 100 questions." Me too. Zora managed a shaky laugh. Okay, okay. She took a breath. Give me 30 minutes to wrap up here. Then we can, I don't know, process whatever this is. William nodded. He watched her go back to serving children. Watched her pull herself together, put the professional mask back on, focus on the work, just like her mother would have. He looked down at the two halves of the dish towel. Torn edges aligned perfectly after 18 years apart. Some promises take decades to keep. Some debts can't be measured in money. Some things, once torn apart, are always meant to come back together. William sat down in the back of the room, held both pieces of fabric in his hands, and waited. For the first time in 5 years, the search was over. For the first time in 18 years, he was home. He actually came back. After 18 years, he kept his promise. If you're feeling emotional right now, you're not alone. Show some love by hitting that like button. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Because this story is about to get even more complicated. Zora's engaged to someone else. Her mother is dying. And William's about to learn that some promises cost more than money can pay. The last child left at 8:15 p.m. Zora locked the door behind the student's parent, then turned to face William. He'd spent the past 30 minutes sitting in the back corner, watching her work, both halves of the dish towel still clutched in his hands. The room felt different, empty, bigger, colder. So Zora said. She didn't move from the door. William Frost, tech entrepreneur. Worth what exactly? 89 million, give or take. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. 89 million. And you spent 5 years looking for us. Yes. Why? The question hung between them. Because I owed your mother everything, William said. Because I made a promise. Because you felt guilty. William flinched. Zora crossed her arms. I'm trying to understand this. You disappeared 18 years ago. Not a word, not a letter, nothing. And now you show up with expensive shoes and a framed piece of fabric and expect what exactly? I didn't know how to find you. You're worth $89 million. You could have found us any time. I tried. I hired 6 investigators. I spent 5 years. Zora's voice was sharp. You spent 5 years. But where were you the other 13? Where were you when Mama's Diner failed? When corporate chains moved in and undercut her prices until she had to close? Where were you when we got evicted from Fletcher Street? When we moved to that apartment with black mold and broken heat? Where were you when Mama worked 3 jobs just to keep me in school? William had no answer. You want to know what happened to us? Zora's eyes were wet, but her voice stayed steady. After you left, Mama kept feeding hungry kids. Every single one she found. She couldn't stop herself, even when we were broke. Even when I begged her to stop giving away food we needed. She'd say, what if that's William? What if he's hungry again? The words cut deeper than any knife. The diner closed in 2009, Zora continued. Mama tried to make it work, but she couldn't compete with McDonald's and Burger King. We lost everything. Moved 4 times in 6 years. Mama remarried in 2014, a good man named Robert Foster. He helped stabilize us, gave us something like security. And you? William asked quietly. I became a teacher. Because that's what you do when you grow up watching your mother sacrifice everything for strangers. You learn to give. Zora paused. And I met Marcus. William felt something twist in his chest. Marcus teaches at the high school. He's been here 3 years. He's kind, present, and he didn't need 2 decades to show up. Zora held up her left hand. A simple engagement ring caught the fluorescent light. We're getting married in June, she said. He proposed 6 months ago. He's never made me a promise he didn't keep. William looked at the dish towel in his hands. At the promise he'd kept too late. I'm happy for you, he managed. Are you? Zora's laugh was bitter. Because you look like someone just stole your life. You deserve someone who was there. I know I did. She moved closer. You want to know the worst part? I kept that stupid piece of fabric for 18 years. Framed it. Told myself it was about Mama, about remembering her values. But some part of me, some idiotic 6-year-old part, actually believed you'd come back. I did come back. 18 years too late. Zora's voice cracked. My mother is dying, William. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. She's in hospice. The doctors give her maybe 2 months. The floor dropped out from under him. What? She's been sick for 8 months. We tried everything. Chemo, radiation, experimental treatments. Nothing worked. Zora wiped her eyes roughly. So forgive me if your dramatic return with matching dish towel pieces feels more like a cruel joke than a fairy tale come true. William stood, moved toward her. I didn't know. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix it. Let me help. Medical bills, treatment, whatever you need. We don't need your money. Zora, we don't need your guilt money. Her voice rose. You think you can just show up after 18 years and write a check? Make everything okay? That's not how this works. Then tell me how it works. William's composure cracked. Tell me what I'm supposed to do with this. I built an entire company on the foundation of your mother's sacrifice. Everything I have, every dollar, every success, exists because she chose to see me when everyone else looked away. How do I live with that? How do I justify my life when it cost her everything? It didn't cost her everything. It cost her dinner. She made that choice freely. She shouldn't have had to choose. But she did. Zora's anger softened slightly. And you know what? She never regretted it. Not once. Even when we were struggling, even when I was angry about the sacrifices, she'd say, I wonder if that boy made something of himself. I hope he's okay. William's throat tightened. She didn't do it for repayment, Zora said quietly. She did it because that's who she was. Feeding hungry children wasn't a transaction for her. It was identity. They stood in silence. Finally, William spoke. Can I meet her? Your mother? Before he couldn't finish. Zora studied him for a long moment. What? To say thank you. To show her I didn't waste what she gave me. She won't remember you. The cancer's in her brain now. Most days, she doesn't remember me clearly. I don't care. I need to see her. Zora looked at the dish towel pieces, then at William's face. Whatever she saw there made her decision. Tomorrow, she said. Visiting hours start at 10. Millbrook Hospice Center. But William, don't expect closure. Don't expect some beautiful moment where everything makes sense. She's dying. It's ugly and sad, and there's no Hollywood ending. I know. And after we visit her, you go back to Silicon Valley. You go back to your life. This, she gestured between them, this isn't a fairy tale. You don't get to sweep in and save us. I'm not trying to save you. Then what are you trying to do? William looked at her directly. I'm trying to figure out how to live with being saved. They met outside Millbrook Hospice Center at 9:55 a.m. William had spent the night in a hotel room, not sleeping, holding both pieces of the dish towel and trying to prepare himself for a meeting 18 years in the making. Zora arrived looking exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, coffee cup in hand. Marcus wanted to come, she said without preamble. I told him this was something I needed to do alone. How much does he know? Everything. I don't keep secrets from my fiancé. She started toward the entrance. He thinks I should hear you out. He's more forgiving than I am. They signed in at the front desk. Walked down hallways that smelled like antiseptic and dying. Past rooms where families sat vigil, where machines beeped, where life measured itself in hours instead of years. Room 247. Zora paused outside. She's having a good day. She knew who I was this morning. But that can change fast. She pushed open the door. Naomi Foster lay in a hospital bed, impossibly small. The woman William remembered had been solid, present, substantial. This woman was disappearing, but her eyes were open, alert. Baby girl, she said when Zora entered. Her voice was thin but clear. You came. Of course I came, Mama. Zora kissed her forehead. I brought someone to meet you. Naomi's gaze shifted to William. No recognition, just polite interest. This is William Frost, Zora said carefully. He knew you a long time ago. From the diner. The diner. Naomi's face brightened slightly. Naomi's kitchen. I had a diner. Yes, Mama. Fed a lot of people. You did. William stepped forward, throat tight. Mrs. Foster, I don't know if you remember, but 22 years ago, you saved my life. I was 7 years old, homeless, starving. You fed me every day for 8 months. Naomi looked at him blankly. I made a promise, William continued. He pulled out both halves of the dish towel. I promised I'd come back, that I'd make something of myself, that I'd— The boy, Naomi whispered. William froze. The boy at the fence. Naomi's eyes focused. William, you were so thin. Like a ghost. Yes. William's voice broke. Yes, that was me. I worried about you. After they took you away, I wondered if you were okay. I am okay. Because of you. You saved me. Naomi smiled. You came back. I promised I would. She looked at the dish towel pieces in his hands. You kept it. All these years. Both halves, Zora said quietly, showing her the framed piece from the school. Naomi reached out a trembling hand. William and Zora each held up their halves, matching the torn edges together. Complete. Did you keep your promise? Naomi asked. Did you make something of yourself? I built a company. I'm worth $89 million. That's nice, baby. But that's not what I asked. Naomi's eyes were sharp despite the cancer eating her brain. Did you make something of yourself? William didn't know how to answer. Did you feed hungry children? Naomi pressed. Did you see the invisible ones? Did you choose kindness when it cost you something? The question hung in the air. No, William admitted. I built an empire. I made money. But I didn't feed anyone. I didn't give back. I just accumulated. Then you didn't keep your promise. The words landed like a blow. The promise wasn't to marry Zora, Naomi continued. The promise was to become someone who sees hungry children and feeds them. To become someone who chooses people over profit. To become someone like, she struggled for the word. Like you, Zora finished softly. Like me, Naomi agreed. She closed her eyes, tired from the effort of speaking. William stood there, both pieces of dish towel in his hands, and felt the full weight of 18 years. He'd kept the wrong promise. He'd come back for Zora, for marriage, for some fairy tale ending that would justify his success and absolve his guilt. But the real promise had been about becoming a different kind of person entirely. I want to fix this, William said. Tell me how to fix this. Naomi's eyes remained closed. Feed them. Who? All of them. Every hungry child you can find. That's how you keep promises. Later, in the hospice cafeteria, William pulled out his checkbook. I want to help, he said to Zora. Your mother's medical bills, your school's meal program, whatever you need. Zora stared at the checkbook like it was a snake. How much do you need? William asked. 100,000? More? I can. Put that away. Zora, I said put it away. Her voice was cold. This is exactly what I was afraid of. You think you could just throw money at this and make it okay? I'm trying to help. You're trying to buy forgiveness. That's not. It is. Zora's hand shook. You show up after 18 years, see my dying mother, feel guilty, and immediately reach for your wallet. Like money can erase the fact that you've spent 2 decades building wealth while we've been fighting to survive. What else am I supposed to do? I don't know. But not this. Not guilt money from a stranger who happens to share half a dish towel with me. I'm not a stranger. Yes, you are. Zora stood. You're a memory. A 7-year-old boy who made an impossible promise. But that boy is gone, and I don't know who you are now. William slammed his hand on the table. I'm someone who's been trying to figure out how to justify my existence. I'm someone who built an $89 million company on the foundation of your mother's sacrifice. Every success I've had, every dollar I've made, every achievement, it all exists because she chose to feed me instead of her own daughter. The cafeteria went quiet. William's voice dropped. Do you know what that feels like? To know that your entire life is built on someone else's hunger? That every meal you took was a meal Zora didn't eat? That every opportunity you had came at the cost of someone else's suffering? Zora's anger faltered. I'm not trying to buy forgiveness, William said. I'm trying to justify being alive. I'm trying to prove that her sacrifice wasn't wasted. That I became someone worth saving. You don't need to prove anything. Yes, I do. Because right now, I'm just a rich man who hoarded wealth while the woman who saved him died in a hospice bed. I'm just someone who kept a piece of fabric for 18 years, but didn't keep the actual promise. Zora sat back down. They were quiet for a long time. Finally, Zora spoke. She didn't do it for you to feel guilty. I know. She did it because feeding hungry children was who she was. It wasn't about you. It wasn't about repayment or debt or promises. Zora's voice softened. It was about seeing someone who needed help and choosing to help them. That's all. How do I live with that? You feed them. William looked up. You heard her, Zora said. The promise wasn't about marriage or money or coming back. It was about becoming someone who sees hungry children and feeds them. So that's what you do. Ow! Zora looked toward the hallway where her mother lay dying. We built something, she said quietly. Together. Something that would make her proud. Naomi Foster died 3 weeks later. William attended the funeral. Sat in the back. Watched Zora deliver a eulogy that broke and mended hearts in equal measure. My mother taught me that kindness isn't a transaction, Zora said. It's identity. You don't feed hungry children because they'll pay you back. You feed them because that's who you are. After the service, Marcus found William in the parking lot. You're the dish towel guy, he said. William nodded. Marcus studied him. Tall, kind-faced, exactly the kind of man someone like Zora deserved. Present. Stable. Real. She told me about the promise, Marcus said. About you coming back. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to complicate things. Marcus smiled slightly. You did, but that's okay. They stood in uncomfortable silence. I'm not trying to take her from you, William said. I know. Marcus shoved his hands in his pockets. But I'm going to be honest with you. Zora's been different since you showed up. Distracted. Conflicted. She loves me, but there's unfinished business. Yeah. Marcus looked toward the church where Zora was accepting condolences. I told her we should postpone the wedding. Figure things out. You broke up? No. We're just pausing, giving her space to work through whatever this is. Marcus met William's eyes. I love her enough to let her figure out what she wants. Even if what she wants isn't me. You're a better man than I am. I'm just a man who's been here. That counts for something. Marcus walked away, and William stood alone in the parking lot, feeling like he'd stolen something he hadn't even asked for. 2 months after Naomi's funeral, William and Zora sat in a lawyer's office, signing paperwork. Naomi's Promise Foundation, the lawyer said, sliding documents across the desk. Initial funding of $10 million, with provisions for ongoing support. Miss Jenkins as executive director, Mr. Frost as primary donor and board chair. Zora signed her name. William signed his. The foundation was real. Our first location, Zora said as they left the office, should be where it all started. The diner. Yeah. She looked at him. You said you bought the building? Through an LLC. The current tenant's lease expires in 4 months. Then we build there. Naomi's kitchen. Rebuilt. The renovation took 6 months. William poured money into it. Not guilt money, he told himself, but purpose money. Every dollar spent was a dollar honoring Naomi's memory, a dollar feeding hungry children, a dollar becoming the person he should have been all along. Zora managed the project, hired staff, designed programs, created systems that would feed not just 40 kids, but 400. They worked side by side. Somewhere in those 6 months, the barrier between them dissolved. Not because of the childhood promise, not because of romance or fairy tales, but because they shared a mission, because they both understood what it meant to be hungry. William literally, Zora by proxy through her mother's sacrifices. Because they both knew that feeding children wasn't charity. It was justice. One night, working late in the half-finished kitchen, Zora said, Marcus and I officially ended things. William looked up from the supply order he'd been reviewing. He deserves someone who's all in, Zora continued. Someone who doesn't spend every evening building community kitchens with their childhood promise keeper. I'm sorry. Don't be. She smiled slightly. He's already dating someone from his school. They're happy. It was the right call for both of us. William set down his paperwork. What about you? Are you happy? Zora considered this. I'm doing the work my mother started. I'm feeding hungry children. I'm building something that matters. She looked at him. Yeah, I'm happy. Good. You? William thought about his penthouse in Silicon Valley, about the life he'd built that had felt so empty. Then he thought about the past 6 months, the planning meetings, the construction updates, the grant applications, the interviews with potential staff members. I'm becoming the person I promised to be, he said. That's not the same as happy. It's close enough. Naomi's Promise Foundation opened on a Saturday in October. The original lot where Naomi's kitchen had stood was now a state-of-the-art community kitchen and meal program. Bright, clean, welcoming. 200 people showed up for the opening. William stood at a podium, looking out at faces that reminded him of his 7-year-old self. Hungry, hopeful, invisible to most of the world. 22 years ago, he began, I was starving behind a fence in this neighborhood. A woman named Naomi Jenkins saw me. She fed me. She saved my life. He pulled out the dish towel. Both halves, now permanently joined and framed. She made me promise to make something of myself. I thought that meant money. I was wrong. It meant this. It meant seeing hungry children and feeding them. It meant choosing people over profit. It meant becoming someone who shows up. Zora stood beside him, and together they cut the ribbon. Naomi's kitchen was reborn. 2 years later, Naomi's Promise Foundation operated in 12 cities. They'd fed over 50,000 children, hired 200 staff members, changed lives in ways that couldn't be measured in spreadsheets or quarterly reports. William had moved to Millbrook permanently, sold the Silicon Valley penthouse, transferred his company operations to remote oversight. Some things mattered more than markets. Zora ran the foundation with the same graceful authority her mother had once moved through her diner. She was brilliant at it, strategic, compassionate, relentless. Somewhere in those 2 years, their partnership had become something else. Not romance exactly, not the fairy tale marriage a 7-year-old had promised a 6-year-old. Something deeper, a shared mission that had calcified into genuine partnership, into trust, into love that was built on showing up, day after day, choice after choice. On the day they opened the 13th location, built on the exact spot where the original diner's fence had stood, Zora said, I have something for you. She handed William a small box. Inside was a ring. Simple, elegant, nothing ostentatious. I'm not proposing, Zora said quickly. Or maybe I am. I don't know. This whole thing is weird. William laughed. What are you asking? I'm asking if you want to make a new promise. Not the one you made when you were 7. Not about marriage, because of obligation or childhood fantasies. She took a breath. A promise about partnership. About building this thing together. About feeding hungry children for the rest of our lives. That sounds like marriage. It's better than marriage. It's mission. William looked at the ring. Then at Zora. Then at the building behind them, where children were already lining up for their first meal. Yes, he said. Yes. Yes. They didn't kiss. Didn't embrace dramatically. Just stood there together, looking at the fence that no longer existed. We should make it official, Zora said. The promise, I mean. She took his hand, led him to the exact spot where 24 years ago, a plate had been passed through a gap in chain-link metal. I promise, William said, to see every hungry child I can find, to feed them, to show up, to choose people over profit, to honor your mother's legacy, to build this with you for as long as I live. I promise, Zora said, to keep doing what my mother started, to feed hungry children because that's who we are, to make sure no one is invisible, to build something that outlasts us both, to do this with you, as partners, for as long as we live. They stood in the space where everything had started. Across the street, partially hidden in the shadow of a building, a small girl watched them. She was maybe 8 years old, thin, hollow-eyed, the kind of invisible that William recognized instantly. Zora saw her at the same moment. They looked at each other. No words needed. Together, they crossed the street. Hey, sweetheart, Zora said gently. You hungry? The girl nodded. Come on, William said. Let's get you something to eat. They led her toward Naomi's kitchen, one adult on each side, the child between them. Inside, the dinner service was just beginning. Steam rose from industrial pots. Volunteers moved between stations. The smell of cooking food filled the air. Salvation, measured in meatloaf and mashed potatoes. The girl ate like someone who understood this might be her last meal. William and Zora watched and saw themselves. What's your name, baby? Zora asked. Sarah, the girl whispered. Sada, I'm Zora. This is William. We run this place. You can come here every day if you need to. We'll feed you. No questions asked. You hear me? Sarah nodded, eyes wide. Where are your people? William asked gently. Don't got any. The words were familiar, an echo across decades. William knelt down to Sarah's level. You do now. You got us. He pulled out a clean dish towel from behind the counter. tore it in half, handed one piece to Sarah. "You keep this. It's a promise. You're not invisible anymore." Sarah clutched the fabric like it was worth more than gold. Maybe it was. Zora's eyes filled with tears. "Some promises aren't kept," she said quietly. "They're multiplied." William took her hand. Together, they watched Sarah eat, watched her color return, watched her hope kindle, and understood, finally, what Naomi had known all along. This was the promise. Not marriage, not money, not dramatic reunions or fairy tale endings. Just this, seeing the invisible child and choosing to feed them anyway. Again and again. Every single day. For as long as they lived. The dish towel passed from hand to hand. The promise passed from generation to generation. And in a community kitchen built on the foundation of sacrifice, hope, and impossible promises kept, hungry children continued to eat. The cycle continued, the way it always should have, the way Naomi had shown them, one plate at a time. This story started with one hungry child and one woman's choice to see him. It ended with a foundation feeding thousands. What will your choice be? If this story moved you, honor Naomi's legacy by sharing it with someone who needs hope today. Subscribe for more incredible, true stories of promises kept, lives changed, and the power of showing up. And tell me in the comments, what promise are you going to keep? Let's multiply kindness, one story at a time.